I was always somehow the token woman. People were glad I was there because I did a pretty good job. I was young, I was a woman, and I came from the East. I ticked all the boxes. I was quite simply useful.
Well, from a token woman in East Germany to the leader of the free world, after 4 terms or 16 years in office, that same Angela Merkel is stepping aside as German chancellor. So what will her legacy be? Does she leave behind a Germany more united or more divided? What are her greatest achievements and her biggest mistakes? Above all, perhaps, who is the real Angela Merkel and how has she survived so long? On To the Point, we ask, Merkel departs, political genius or world-class pragmatist? Thanks very much for joining us here on To the Point today. And I'm joined in the studio by 3 journalists who have all written biographies of Angela Merkel, beginning with Ursula Weidenfeld, who asks, who is Angela Merkel? In a crisis, she's the best, but when it comes to longer-term policy, she's left much work undone. Also with us is Andreas Rinke, who believes that Merkel personifies a win-win approach to international diplomacy. She's the queen of the small steps. And a very warm welcome too to Ralph Bollmann, who says she set out as a chancellor of change and became a conservative chancellor. Well, thank you all 3 for being here today. Ralph, I'd like to begin with you. After 16 years, Angela Merkel's journey is going on to a different track, that's for sure. How much is she going to be missed?
Well, I think very much, but because the times will be more complicated. Last 13 years, we had one crisis after the other. I think in the future, we will have several crises at once. And so many people will remember Angela Merkel as the chancellor of the last period of relative stability. And for Germans especially, that is a very important thing. A historian published a book about the history of the Federal Republic some years ago with the title In Search for Security. Security, stability, continuity, that's very, very important for voters in Germany.
OK, Ursula, is Germany a better place because of Angela Merkel?
Well, I think it is a good place to be, and it is a better place than it has been before.
But everybody's so frightened of the future.
Well, I think that everybody has the impression and the feeling that 16 years are enough. And if you look at the last 4 years of Angela Merkel, everybody experienced that she was tired, that she was not at the helm of politics as she should have been, with the exception of the COVID-19 crisis. So I think it is clearly 16 years are enough. And the insecurity, the fear of not living in instability is crucial for Germany, but would have happened even if Angela Merkel had run again. So,
Ralph, what do you say?
Well, I don't agree completely because it's important to know that she wanted to leave in 2016 already. A lot of people, including world leaders, backed her to stay because at that time, it was also a period of fear of instability because of Trump, because of Brexit, and a lot of other issues. So I think if she could have chosen her departure, that would have been much earlier. She stayed on, and I think she will be remembered as also somebody who has a particular style of doing politics, always looking for consensus, being very rational, or trying at least to be very rational. And that's something what at least Germans like.
But I think it's a different thing if you look from the outside to Germany. And in that position and perspective, stability, the Merkel way of doing politics is totally different weighted than from a German perspective, because it is experience counts much more if you live if you look from the outside to Germany, or if you are in international politics. But if you look at Germany, you would always say, well, there has been a pension reform which should have been done in the past 4 years. There are the question of tackling climate change isn't solved for Germany. There are lots of things which are not solved because
what the commentators are calling unfinished business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that in just a second. Just the question, first of all, I'm very interested in whether Germany, because we talk about Germany was a divided country for so long and then reunified. Is now Germany, after and with Angela Merkel, a more divided country or a less divided country?
Perhaps it's more divided because she didn't do very much for the East Germans and she was not very popular among the East Germans. Already before the refugees crisis in 2015, but even more after the refugees crisis. And I think that's a typical process because the East Germans in 1989, 1990, after the reunification, were sort of migrants in their own country, migrants in the Federal Republic. And usually, if a new group of migrants is coming to a country, those who came before are very much hostile because they think this woman should do something for us, for the East Germans. She comes from East Germany, and she is dealing with that new group of migrants, of immigrants. And so it was a really, really, really big division between Angela Merkel and her East German compatriots.
OK, let me just pick up on that. As a young woman, Angela Merkel trained as a scientist, and facts are very important to her, as is clear in this parliamentary debate on the COVID pandemic.
I decided to study physics in the GDR, which I would not have done in West Germany, because I knew that many things can be discredited, but not gravity, not the speed of light and other facts. And that will continue to be the case, ladies and gentlemen.
Ralph, how important is understanding Angela Merkel's background in East Germany to understanding the her whole story in power?
Well, of course, very important, because if you were brought up in East Germany, you have a completely different experience, biography as well. And she was looking on German politics as an outsider, more or less. And that actually helped her, because she knew that she has to get power in a different way. Power is very fragile. She didn't have all the powers behind her, not coming from one of the forceful Bundesländer in the West. And that really shaped her style. And as it was just mentioned, being a physician as well. That's helped her to rationalize her politics.
There's a wonderful quote from way back when, where Angela Merkel says, "I yearn for the doable." Is that the essence of Angela Merkel? Is she fascinated by getting up in the morning and facing a challenge and perhaps solving the challenge?
Well, she said that she really likes crises. She loves them, actually, because she thinks that as a politician, that's why you're there, to tackle crisis. And so she sees that as a challenge, not as a problem. And I think that during these 16 years, that explained a lot how she was doing politics.
Another aspect of this quote is that she's always looking for the possible. And if things seem impossible to her in a concrete political situation, she doesn't start to deal with that. That's, of course, one reason why she didn't start some reforms, because she knows in the German system of federalism, everything is very, very complicated and it will not come to a good end, and then she doesn't begin it.
I think one special point of being a scientist is that you don't fear failure. She always said that failure is something which is implemented in scientific trial and error, and that is one of her
but
central.
She tries to avoid failure, nevertheless.
Yeah, but if she starts and if she goes for something and she fails, she would try it again and again.
OK, but is she just the scientist, just the pragmatist, or is there a touch of that's the question that we've set in the programme today? Is there a touch of genius, something unique? You laugh.
No, I wouldn't.
16 years in power. She's been an international leader who has won over very many people. There's something very special going on with this woman.
Well, I think the speciality is the German election system. You can't stay for 16 years in power because you are not elected directly, because it is always the party which is elected, and therefore Germany has had long chancellorships like Helmut Kohl, Konrad Adenauer. There were long times of stability in the political political sense.
I think that an important part of the secret of Angela Merkel is that she is interested.
There is
only,
no secret.
Yeah,
there is no secret.
There is a secret, and she is interested only in power itself, but not in the glamour of power. And she's not so much interested in that things she's doing are looking very good just now, to get applause just now, but to bring things to a good end.
Power is just a tool. I think that's important. And I mean, Germans, I think, in general, are a bit suspicious of words like geniuses and things like that. So she's very clever. I mean, she has to be clever, otherwise you wouldn't have survived 16 years in politics.
But power
with 4
isn't
elections.
not only a tool. It is
for her.
I don't think that is true. I think power is the essence of her political identity. She has to have power to be successful. She wants power not only to get to something, but she wants power for itself. As any politician who tries to become prime minister or chancellor, you have to have a completely direct relationship with power.
But I don't agree, because in her case, I mean, as it was mentioned before, she wanted to leave much earlier. Normally, politicians try to stick to the power they have. It's no problem for her to actually leave it, and that's
right.
underlined.
But she doesn't want to leave the power to the wrong persons, not to Donald Trump on the international scene. That's one of the reasons why she decided to recandidate for another term in 2016 or 17. And in Germany too, she doesn't want to leave power to her old enemies, just like Friedrich Merz, her rival from her early years.
And I think she doesn't want to be robbed of the power. So to be to lose an election, that is crucial, and therefore she went out of office by her own will.
OK, so Angela Merkel is not just from the former East Germany, as we've seen. She is also, of course, a woman from the former East Germany. However, she's often appeared reluctant to be typecast as either a voice of the East or as a voice of feminism. Here's the Chancellor's response on 2 separate occasions to the issue of feminism.
So, the history of feminism has something in common with me, and there are also, I would say, there are differences. I don't want to adorn myself with a title that I do not have. Then I am a feminist. I said that a little timidly on stage at the time. Today it is better thought through, and therefore, in this sense, I can say, yes, we should all be feminists.
Ursula Weidenfeld, do you understand to an extent this reluctance of Angela Merkel to be typecast, to be forced into a role that she doesn't necessarily want to play?
Yes, I think that she started her career as a family and women minister in the
It's an important point,
with Helmut Kohl, and she has been a friend of Alice Schwarzer, who's the leading feminist in Germany, and knowing that there is a long history of feminism in Western Germany, and knowing the differences between these types of feminism to the Eastern German approach of women who always worked, had a family and worked in factories or in offices, knowing the difference between the childcare systems, that I suppose that was the reason for her to say, well, I didn't have to fight for women's rights, because in Eastern Germany there was a lot of them were implemented in the system for other reasons, but they were in the system, and that is the reason why I don't call myself a feminist. And the last word we saw in the teaser was it's typical Merkelian, because she says, well, we all, and she said not all women should be feminists, but all of us should be feminists, which means, well, let's make it an attitude. And that is not the thing feminists want to do.
But she also thought at the beginning of her career that she has to be prudent and not being seen as only in this women role. She was the first female chancellor, and she was coming from the Conservative Party, which was absolutely male-dominated at that time. So she developed a sense of being more relaxed about her being a female chancellor and finally at the end calling herself a feminist.
Yeah. One interesting point is, I think, that the only or the most successful reform she did in domestic politics was the reform of family policies in Germany, to introduce childcare and to help women to go to work, because Germany was very conservative in this sense before. And I think, and when she built her first government in 2005, the only ministry she wanted to have her own party was the Ministry of Family. And I think that's really, she pushed this issue during her time, during her chancellorship.
OK, interesting stuff. Now, Angela Merkel has the highest approval ratings of any world leader. To find out why, let's hear what other global players have to say.
She's always been somebody I can trust, and somebody who I think deeply believes in the role that Germany can play and that all wealthy nations can play in not only making our countries better, but also making the world better.
What annoyed me at times, annoyed me immensely, is that she sometimes acted hesitantly when it came to major European decisions. In my opinion, she has some good character traits for being a negotiator and a politician in general. First, she can really listen. Second, she can hold back.
Everyone was closing their borders to prevent migrants from entering. She took the bold step of standing up and saying, I am going to open my borders and I will allow these people in. She knew she was taking a risk.
But I also saw a side of her that was very compassionate and decent, a kind person with a lovely soul.
Der Romantiker.
Andreas, the words that stick out there for me are courage, compassion, decency. She wants to turn the world into a better place. It almost sounds saintly.
Well, I don't know if it's saintly, but she definitely has she's a Protestant, yeah, so she's a bit suspicious of that. But of course, yeah, she wants to create or help to create a better world. I mean, knowing that Germany is just one, not tiny player, but not the most important one, but she's always looking for win-win situations in foreign policy as well. And I think that's why a lot of world leaders actually appreciated that. And in her terms, it's always very important, and that's how she judged her relationship to world leaders. Do they keep their promises they made to her? If they don't or didn't, then they have a problem. If they did, even if they have a different opinion, then she was satisfied.
How would you say she's coped with the big beasts of the world, with the likes of Donald Trump and especially Vladimir Putin?
Well, with Donald Trump, I mean, we already heard, and I agree that she actually made her points against Trump from the beginning, after the election, stressing the values of the Western world as she sees it. Yeah. And I think she's doing the same towards Putin and Xi, knowing at the same time that you have to cooperate on a lot of things, climate, trade.
Yeah, but it is important to understand that for her, compromise, cooperation, searching consensus is not opportunism, but is a principle for itself. It's a principle of liberal democracy, of multilateralism, of international cooperation.
Has it worked? Has it worked on the climate crisis? Has she had enough impact?
Well, on the international level, I would say yes. She, as a Ministry of Environment, already in 1995, she achieved an international agreement against climate change. Then with George W. Bush at the Heiligendamm Summit in 2007, and so on and so on. The problem was on the national level and in domestic politics, she didn't take the risk to change things which are negative for people in Germany who would have paid more money for heating, for driving by car, and so on.
I think that she, in international politics, achieved or found a new role for Germany, and perhaps the most modern role for Germany, which has been defined in the 21st century. She sees Germany as a strong country economically, and she's ready to pay the price for that, in opposite to Gerhard Schröder, her predecessor, and she knows that it is crucial for Germany to be the moderator of political processes, and that is a role which Germany didn't had before, and it is probably, hopefully, one which can be maintained under her successors.
It's interesting that you say that, though, but in those comments that we just heard, we heard Jean-Claude Juncker, the EU Commission President, complaining about her tendency to dither, to delay, as he put it, to procrastinate.
No, it is not the thing that she's not ready to work. It is that she has to think things over and over again, and in the end find to a decision or to a position which she has to regret afterwards, and that is waiting to the last possible moment, especially in the Euro crisis, was probably in the end something which held Greece in the Eurozone.
I think it's important to understand as well that she sees Germany as a bridge. Bridge between North and South, bridge between the East and West. And I mean, that's her biography as well. And Jean-Claude Juncker, as a Commission President, of course, was much more ambitious in some plans, but she always said, look, we have to safeguard the interests of the North, for example, as well, against money interests of the South. And Germany was always trying to play this bridging role. Very often, both sides were satisfied, but she always said, a compromise where nobody is satisfied is maybe one of the best.
And Jean-Claude Juncker is very much in favor, or has always been very much in favor of smaller, more integrated Europe. And for Angela Merkel, it is always important to cooperate with the whole, to hold Europe together, especially Eastern Europe. You should not forget that she's the only Western European leader coming from Eastern Europe. That's an important point, I think.
Well, meanwhile, it seems Angela Merkel herself is looking forward to a more relaxed life.
I will probably have various thoughts, as I usually do, about what I should actually do now. Then I will suddenly realize that someone else is already doing it. I think I'll like that very much. Then I might read, but then my eyes will get droopy because I'm tired. Then I'll rest a bit, and then let's see where I turn up.
Ursula, the first question, I suppose, is many foreigners will be wondering, why is she stepping down at all? Why is she stepping aside?
16 years are enough. They're more than enough.
But she lives for politics.
Well, she does, but she doesn't need politics to live. So that is the difference to some other politicians. She's one, she can leave her office, just turn the light off, close the door and walk away.
She had a life before politics as well. She entered politics with 35 years. And so I think she's one of the rare type of politicians who are able to deal with themselves, to make other things, to leave politics, indeed.
And there's another element. She knows that you have to pay a price as well if you stay in politics for so long, and your party has to pay a price. So in a democracy, it might be more healthy if you have a change. And she was actually preventing this change being so popular.
That was very cautiously phrased.
But I think we will see her again. She will probably appear in one of the great American universities or in a foundation or whatever.
She will not take a political office.
She won't disappear, but she won't...
She won't be involved with the gas pipeline, and she won't turn up in talk shows, I'm pretty sure.
What do her critics say? What is the main thing that her critics say about Angela Merkel, her detractors, even her enemies, perhaps?
Well, I think that she didn't do the work she has to be done, which has to be done in Germany. Pension reform, climate change. Look at all the points which are on the table.
It's a long list. It is a long list.
Yeah, we've seen in the last year during the COVID crisis that there are many things not working well in Germany, or at least not working as well as we thought. Public administration, for example, public health service, digitalization. There are many problems in Germany too.
And if you're always looking for win-win situations, you might come to a point where you actually can't solve problems because you take into account what everybody wants, but maybe in some situations you actually should, with a determination, say what you want.
How's she going to go down in history? One sentence each?
I don't know, because I don't know how the world will develop. I think that's determining how people look at Angela Merkel.
Yeah, okay.
The first chancellor of the 21st century.
Yeah.
The chancellor of crisis, who guaranteed stability in the big crisis we had.
Okay, very positive. We've been talking about Angela Merkel turning in after 16 years in politics. Great discussion. Thank you very much for being with us today. If you've enjoyed it as much as I have, come back next time round. Bye-bye. Tschüss.